Welcome to the Bare Naked Shrinks, with your hosts Dr. Dany and Dr. Courtney, here to strip down disordered eating and negative body image.
Hello, welcome everyone, and we would especially like to welcome our friend and colleague, Millie Plotkin.
Hello.
We are coming together today to talk about the conference that we all were just at. It was the International Conference for Eating Disorders, and we were in San Antonio. Yeehaw! And we had a lot of fun and learned a lot. And also, it was focused around leveraging technology and innovation in the field, because that is where we've been going. So we're going to chat about that, the pros, the cons, the highs, the lows. And to get things started, let's get into our
cake and crap.
So Millie, that is where we say like good and bad, like what's happening in our lives. So good, I would say, was definitely being with you all last week. It was so much fun and so rejuvenating and really filled my cup. The crap is I got a cold. On Wednesday, I think I woke up with a sore throat. So I must have picked something up on the plane. I haven't been sick in a really long time, so it's kind of a bummer, but that's the worst thing going on, then that's not too bad. How about you, Courtney?
I would say my cake was definitely the conference. It was so much fun. I'm kind of like, did we go to an academic conference or was that just a girls' trip? I'm really not sure.
Yes, both.
So it was so fun to catch up with friends and just hang out. And yeah, I just loved seeing friends from all over the country. It feels like I said, always just feels like a reunion of sorts. So that was wonderful. I would say my crap was I didn't sleep much during the conference. And so I got back to Seattle at 11 p.m. on Sunday, and Monday and Tuesday I was just so tired. And so
you went straight back to work?
Those days I was like, whew, man, it was a little rough, but I survived. So
yeah, Millie and I were roommates, and we were in bed by like 11 or 12.
Well, except that I was still playing on my phone until after 12 every day. But
oh, you did? Oh, okay. I went straight to sleep.
Our Airbnb was a little bit more.
Well, you had Party Central.
All right, Millie, how about you?
So for me, like you said, the conference is always like a big reunion. I was telling people it's always a family reunion. There might be some cousins you don't want to spend time with, but that's okay.
So true.
And for me, because I'm no longer working in the field full time, it's really always amazing to be able to really connect with people who I don't get to see very often, like you two and just like so many other people. So yes, I enjoyed that so much. And then I guess my crap would be that I've been having mold remediation done on my place, and fortunately that's finished.
Mold?
Yes, there was black mold in my walls because it's the big one mess. And they finished doing that, but currently, I have areas of my condo that are blocked off, so my furniture is all stuck in the middle of the room. I have areas I can't use, and now I have to sit and wait for them to send someone to put new walls up, and I don't know how long that's going to take, so yeah, it's a major disruption. I cannot use my office at all right now.
Do you have an physical office to go to?
I have, right today I work at a hospital, and I work there 3 days a week, and I'm home 2 days a week. So I have a home office, but it's not usable at the moment at all. So that's very annoying, and I don't know how long it's going to last.
Well, that sucks.
Sorry, your device lost its
Hold on, Alexa's talking to me.
Hey, Alexa.
Hi, Alexa. How was your cake and crap?
It was really funny. Yesterday, I was reading a story to Lively, and it was the characters in it were named Alexa and Liana. And all of a sudden, Alexa goes, playing Rihanna. Because Lively likes to listen to Rihanna so much that she just picked up on it.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Well, Millie, I would love for you, because you have a really unique, you might be the only person in our field.
Yes.
And so I would love for you to tell everyone what you do and what your role is in the field of eating disorders.
Yes. So I have a master's degree in library science, and I'm the only librarian in the eating disorders field. So I used to do that. Well, I'm a full-time hospital librarian. I was working for Eating Recovery Center for many years. Now I work for a hospital in Washington, D.C. that has no eating disorders treatment at all. They don't know anything about the topic. So I'm doing other medical library stuff. Of course, my specialty is eating disorders. So I have a database called the Eating Disorders Information Gateway, which is a citation database of all of the research in our field. So I have over 30,000 citations in there. More than half of them are journal articles. There's also books and informational handouts and reports and all sorts of stuff. And I'm
Say the exact website, like .com again. I just want to put it up.
Oh, yeah. So it's Eating Disorder Gateway, all one word, .org.
Okay.
And that is hosted by the National Alliance for Eating Disorders.
Okay.
So it is available on their website.
Amazing.
And anyone can access.
Anyone can access it. It is completely free to use. Right now, it has like regular search and advanced search. I recommend using the advanced search. It's a little easier to navigate. When you use that, it will give you, in your response, it will show two different tabs, and one of them is marked as consumer. So that is all stuff that I have designated to be more for like family members, people who are currently in recovery from their eating disorder or even have not started recovery. That's it's still a research base, but easier to understand. And then if you choose the everything tab, then that's got like all of the journal articles in there, and you can search by different topics. There's a huge keyword search base in there, so you can choose, like, you want to search by a certain specific disorder, do you want to search by type of therapy? So it's pretty detailed.
Can you download? Are they full at all access?
Some of them are. Because of copyright law, I cannot have full articles actually saved in the database itself, but whenever possible, I do have links to like PubMed Central and like places NIH. that legally have the full articles. Otherwise, there is also a page with tips on how to get access to articles. So if you don't have like a university connection to get them, it has suggestions for things like ask your colleagues for help, post on social media and say that you need a copy, email the authors. They'd be happy to share their research with you. So most stuff you can get somehow. It might not always be direct, but that's because publishers want you to pay for stuff.
Yeah. No, I love it. Because I was so used to being at UCLA and UCSD and having access. So it was a real bummer. And then back in the day, you could like share your access with people. Like, I remember when Leslie was at the DBT Center, I could early in my UCLA days give her my login information. But then with like virtual private networks and things like that, you can't do that anymore.
Most of the time, I mean, I found, like I said, sometimes if you post on social media and say, hey, I'm looking for this article, it's very likely you'll come across someone who has a copy of it because they thought it was interesting too, and they can send it to you. Or especially with newer stuff, it's harder sometimes with older articles because people change institutions. But with newer things, you can email the author and say, hey, I think your research is really interesting. I would love to be able to read this article. And they're not always going to respond, but often they're excited that someone is reading their work.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's kind of a good foray into our topic today, because that's tech and innovation, what you're doing with the database. Let's start with maybe some things that we learned that we didn't know were going on in the field. So does anyone want to start?
So I went to the keynote, which was about technology, AI, barriers to care, and how people are trying to use various forms of technology to help people get access to care of some kind, which is really important and interesting. Talked about some of the issues that come up. And there was also a plenary that talked about these problems. So people have been trying to program chatbots, and sometimes they work pretty well, and sometimes they go completely off the rails.
What are ways, because I went to the keynote, but I did not go to that plenary because it was at 8 a.m.
They gave examples. I wish I could remember which specific researcher it was, but he gave some really good examples of trying to program a chatbot by feeding it. So there's different ways of doing this, we should explain. So one is very simple, where I like to compare it to a choose your own adventure, where you tell the program, if someone says A, give this response. If someone says B, give this response. So it's pretty simple. It can kind of interpret what the person's saying. They don't have to use exact words.
But you have to do a lot more on the front end of programming if you do that.
Yeah, but that way you know that it's only giving the responses that you want it to give. It's not going to make stuff up.
Like, it's not going to tell you to lose weight or like
Right.
do like fat phobic things.
Right. So it's completely programmed. You know all of the responses and you have a really good amount of control. But like you said, it takes a long time to build out because you want to try to make it as comprehensive as possible. There are also ones that just use like
machine learning, right?
Yeah, where it kind of just goes out into the web and finds responses, and that's where it can end up being stuff that's really dangerous. Because if someone starts talking about suicidal ideation, it might go into something and find stuff from where people are like encouraging people to commit suicide, and you could have really devastating results. There are also ones that's kind of in between where people will program in and feed it a lot of data. So there was an example of like teaching it using videos of real therapy sessions. So it's all stuff that's done by licensed therapists. And I think they were programmed using a variety of different modalities. I'm not quite sure. But they fed all this stuff in, so they had control of what they were giving it. It was not just everything on the internet. But still let it figure out, do machine learning to figure out responses. But it didn't have great results. So an example he gave was someone would say something like, oh, I'm really depressed. I've been struggling a lot. And the response wanted to sound like a real therapist. So the response was, And then
this is not what real therapy at least not me and Courtney.
Yeah, so it just did that. So then the person says a little bit more about the depression, and then the next response was go on. So then the person says a little bit more, and then the response it gave was, it sounds like you have issues with your mother. Even though the patient had not done anything about their personal relationships, their family relationships, but apparently it tapped into something from Freud and said you have issues with your mother.
I mean, some of us do, some of us don't.
Yeah, it sounds like what my therapist does to me all the
time. It's
time.
not what you should be getting from what this person was typing as the patient view. So there's a lot of work left to do. And that's, I mean, it's a good start for the way to get the information in there because you're making sure that it's not giving it dangerous stuff that's going to harm people. But it's also not very helpful.
I was thinking is like if you use the machine learning language-based models, but then you also establish rules, like if then,
Right.
you know, like you can and can't say this, or you know, like putting in rules that guide the machine learning.
Right. And I think they talked about this a little bit, but I don't remember specifically in depth what they had about it. But I think that's probably ends up being the best way that you give it information. But instead of being strictly programmed, it does have the opportunity to learn, but it has to learn from good, safe information. And then you do program in those rules.
Well, and the other kind of takeaway, I think, from the keynote also was that there's no replacement for real human to human connection, at least at this point.
Right.
And I think, so we were talking before we logged on that I have an idea for an app. I'm not getting into it right now, but it would not replace therapy. It would be an adjunct to therapy, or even like an aftercare, or I'm pre-contemplation of going to therapy, so I just want to get started kind of thing, almost like when people use a self-help book and they're not quite ready, but then they get into it and they're like, maybe I do need a little more. So yeah, at this point, I don't think any of this is replacing us. But Millie, we've also talked a little bit about our concerns, and we were texting about it in our group chat this morning, about how, you know, AI can like make up stuff, make up citations and even presentations or papers or whatever. As a librarian who obviously really, really cares about accurate citations, I wondered if you could talk a little more about that.
Yeah, so I actually have a really good example of this, something that happened in our hospital library very recently, which is we often get people who will say, oh, I'm looking for a search on X topic. And sometimes they'll give examples of articles that they found, and they'll say, like, here's 2 or 3 articles that I found in my search, which I think are good examples. Could you expand on this? And that's very helpful for us as librarians because we have a good idea of what they're looking for. So I love when people do that. So in this case, someone had sent me a search and they said, this is my topic. And then it was broken down into like 5 different talking points, which are really well described. And then in each of them, it said, and here's an example article. And could you find something else? And I was very impressed because this was just so well laid out. It was really easy to understand. Thought, this is fantastic. It's going to be a pretty easy search to do. And then I started trying to find the articles that were listed, and none of them were real. This entire thing had been written using probably ChatGPT. The person who sent it to me had said, programmed in, I'm looking for information on this topic. And it created this whole document and invented articles that I should look for. And I had to
actually didn't exist.
None of them existed.
Did they add, like, how does that even happen?
This is something that happens very frequently with ChatGPT. Maybe other AI programs, I don't know for sure, but that's one that is well known.
It just makes up citations.
It makes up citations. So this has happened.
There's so many citations that it can pull from. It just doesn't even make sense.
It invents a title that sounds really good. Sometimes it will, and I think fairly often, it will give the names of real authors that have written on that topic. And it will give, I haven't seen this myself, but one of my coworkers told me he's seen, or it will give a DOI, which is it stands for Direct Object Identifier. It gives a link to an article. And it will give one, and it's an actual link, but it's to a completely different article. It just like pulls a number. So on paper, it looks completely legitimate. But then when you like click on this link, it doesn't match. And then you try to find that actual article and you find out that it doesn't exist. And this has been a big problem. Recently, the federal government put out a report on this new agency they're planning to create, Make America Healthy, which is going to replace the Department of Health and Human Services. And people started reading this report, and it has fake citations within it.
So what happens when a non-academic, non-scientist is in charge?
Yeah, but this has happened in lawsuits. Very recently, a major law firm was fined, or actually, I'm not sure they've even decided what's going to happen to this firm, but someone filed an argument for something that they were trying to do in court and why they were correct. And it gave a list of supposed precedents for why the judge should decide in their favor on this one point of law. And all of the precedents were fake cases. Because again, someone just went into the web and said, I need some precedents. GPT said, okay, here's some. And the person did not actually check. They didn't even bother, like, you should do your due diligence and read and say, do these cases actually fit the argument that I'm making? And this person did not do that, sent it to the court. The court started reading it and said, none of this is real. And the official term they are called hallucinations.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, when AI invents articles and court cases and all that, they're called hallucinations. That's the actual term for it.
We should coin a new word, AI solutions or something.
But it's a big problem. So people have been caught doing this for journal articles.
How many kids are doing this to write papers?
Exactly.
I had one of my patients is a senior in college, and she was saying that everyone does it.
I use AI for sure. But I also really try to do so much on my own because I'm such a creative person. I worry about losing that. So if it's something that I don't really care about, like, oh, I have a lot to do today, here's what I need to accomplish, what order is best to do it, like helping with ADHD or something. Right. But if I'm writing email, I will write the email first and then I'll be like, can you make this sound a little more professional or something, instead of just being like, write this email. So I don't know. I think AI has the most room to grow, but let's now spin and talk about some positive things. So the biggest thing I think for technology and innovation is accessibility.
Yes,
so
totally.
I love meeting patients in person, but the pandemic certainly taught us that really great quality care can happen virtually. And now there are entire companies, I'm thinking like Within and Equip, that are all virtual. So there are a lot more access to care, especially for people in maybe rural areas or urban areas like LA where people don't want to drive because it's bonkers. And then also, the ability to do virtual groups and things like that.
Right.
So I think the accessibility piece is a positive.
I agree.
Other positives?
And so Jenna Tregarthen did the keynote. And for people who don't know her, she's the creator of the app Recovery Record. And part of the reason that she created that was because there are a lot of people who don't have access. So for people who really, because of financial reasons or where they live, whatever it is, really can't see a therapist, like you said, it's not a complete replacement, but for some people, it is better than nothing, and it's very carefully moderated, and she's worked with a lot of professionals in the field. And it does also have what you were talking about, Danielle, that if a therapist wants to use it, or a dietitian in their office with a patient, it's a way to check in during the week, say, look, I ate my meals, but maybe I found this particular situation really triggering. And instead of having to call you and say, help, I've been triggered, they can use the app and find some resources or techniques that they can use so that then when they're back in session, they can kind of talk about, I used this and it really helped me, or I tried this and it was not helpful.
The other thing is I've had a lot of patients, and this is helpful for me too. So a lot of people's episodic memory is not very great, and the ability to recall the whole week and what you ate. So I think that's also super helpful, that people can bring it into session and be like, oh yeah, I forgot, I was going to tell you, I went to this dinner and this is what happened,
Yes.
So that's the other positive thing of using platforms like that. And I've also done the same thing with there's this emotion app. I think it's called Emo. And so patients will put in their emotions throughout the week, and then they'll pull it up in session and be like, oh yeah, I remember what was going on this day. So that is also helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I think these things can be great for people who want to work with their therapist, or if they don't have anything. I know there's in Recovery Record, you can choose it has some DBT stuff, it has some CBT, it has some ACT, so people can figure out what works best for them. Or if they've been in a treatment center, they can say, oh, this is the modality that I'm used to using. I'm really comfortable with it.
I think what's cool about Recovery Record now too is that because obviously I'm a DBT clinician, and so I always have patients fill out diary cards every single day, and that's what guides our session. And so I was having a lot of patients fill out both their diary card and recovery record, which is a lot. Now you can do both in the recovery record platform.
Oh,
nice.
Okay, well, this will be kind of our final topic. Where do we think the field will be in 10 to 15 years? What do we think it will look like?
So I'm going to put on my advocacy hat for a moment, because I'm also on the board of the Eating Disorders Coalition, and we're very, very concerned about all the funding cuts that are happening.
Yeah.
And I'm really scared that we're not going to be able to make as much progress as we really want, because the funding for programs like Sherry Levinson has been doing so much work in personalized care and making sure that people are helping people to figure out, is DBT what I need? Is CBT can be better for my personal needs? And she has lost so much funding in that area. And so I really think that unfortunately, we're just not going to have as much progress as we had hoped to.
I know a few people that we've had on this podcast that have lost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's that's a good point, Millie. I'm glad you are bringing that up. As far as sort of the technology thing, I think it could go kind of two directions. I think people could really swing full force into the virtual world and AI, and our jobs might become as private practitioners might become much more limited. I also can see people really almost how, I like old things like old typewriters and mechanical clocks. I like things I can actually fix and touch with my hands. I also could see people kind of swinging back like steampunk, okay, I really miss human connection, and I want old school therapy. So I feel and then I think there can be everything in between. Some people are on one, some people are the other. That's kind of what my brain has thought. What about you, Courtney?
I hope that in 10 to 15 years that our field is no longer debating eating disorders versus individuals in larger bodies and the O word, and that rather that we accept that weight stigma exists, we acknowledge how it impacts individuals with eating disorders, and have done a better job of acknowledging the public that like eating disorders come in all shapes and sizes, and really have updated our treatments to include addressing weight stigma, anti-fat bias. And so I guess I would just hope that there's no more discourse about whether or not that exists, or whether or not individuals in larger bodies can like have a real eating disorder, things like that. Hopefully that like maybe we don't call it atypical anorexia anymore and update the anorexia definition to be a little bit more accurate for people that meet that criteria, in all shapes and sizes. So I guess that would be my hope.
I like that.
So as someone in a larger body, I want to give you a hallelujah on that.
Yeah. And I mean, I was reflecting this conference, like, because I did some of the talks that I went to were on weight stigma. And I mean, at least for me, it felt like it reiterated a lot of things that I've learned. But I also was thinking about, my first conference, I think it was like 10 years ago now, when there was a lot more debate regarding those topics. And I do think that we've made a lot of progress in acknowledging that, right? And there doesn't feel like there's as much debate, but obviously we still have some ways to go, because there were some talks on, I don't know if I want to be specific, but things that could assist with disordered eating behaviors to also treat them, which is confusing.
No, it has come a long way from like 20 years ago.
Totally. So I'll be curious to see where it is in 10, 15 years.
Hopefully much further along. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Millie. It's so good to see you.
Yes, thank you for joining.
I want to FaceTime you on the regular. I need to get my Millie in.
I would love that.
And stay tuned for next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe. See y'all next time.